Hello. I wanted to do a video today and talk about how I stay positive in a position in life where most people would struggle to do so, being residentially challenged or homeless. Um, I wrote down some notes here, so I'm just going to go over the notes and see what I have to say, each little key point. First is meditation. Definitely meditation. This is a multi-purpose tool for me. It's a great way to rest my body. I find my body recovers better when I meditate than when I actually sleep. It's a great way to recharge my batteries emotionally, to rest myself mentally and spiritually. Another is moving my body. I do a lot of walking. I do a lot of walking with a weighted backpack. I average 8 to 10 miles a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. And on top of that, every other day, I exercise. For a while, I was going to the gym, and then a friend of mine gave me some resistance bands, and I can just use those out wherever I got a tree. So I've kind of cut back on the unnecessary money at the gym. It's more money to go into food or whatever necessity I need at the time. Next is prayer. Pray however you like. It's not about how you pray. It's just that you pray. That you're communing with your higher source or with your ancestors, your spirit guides, whatever resonates with you in your spiritual practices. Expressing gratitude. I've been expressing gratitude from the beginning of this journey. However, I am endeavoring to do it more when I wake up and start my day with gratitude. I find my day goes a lot better, and this really helps with manifestation. Next is be gentle and loving toward myself. Listen to my body, and watching what I say to myself. When I start having aches and pains, that's my body trying to tell me something. That's generally telling me that I'm overdoing it. I am trying too hard. The point of a peaceful life is to go with the flow, go with the path of least resistance. So if my knees start hurting, for example, then I know that I'm walking too much. Why am I walking too much? It's probably to get something that I don't really need but want. And also in the loving myself, there's affirmations for some people. I sometimes engage in affirmations. Mostly I'm just very careful about how I talk to myself. I started this process out 3-4 years ago simply by eliminating negative words like can't, for example. Then I noticed a big change in my life when I started eliminating negative words. And then it's gotten to the point where now I'm saying positive things to myself. And the term fake it till you make it kind of comes to mind for the beginning process of this, because I can't really necessarily say that when I started out this journey that I believed everything positive that I told about myself. Something inside of me knew it was true, but my ego was at war with that. But now I believe it. Basically, I learned to talk to myself the way that I wish people had talked to me when I was growing up. The way I wished that my parents had talked to me, or my sibling, or my friends, teachers. I've learned to kind of reparent myself. Next is eat as healthy as resources allow. Being homeless, that's tricky, but I think I do a lot better than the average person who doesn't try to do this. Myself, since I exercise and trying to burn fat, gain some muscle, for me it's just whenever I can get healthy protein in, staying away from sugars and high foods with high amounts of salt. Next is being selective about the people and places I'm around. There are resources out there that for people in my position, such as homeless shelters and such. For me, that doesn't work out because it's like not wanting to get sick but going and spending time in the hospital all the time. When you go to a shelter, and this isn't condemning shelters in any way, but it's filled with people who are, well, homeless like myself, and most people who are homeless don't handle being homeless very well. Usually they're homeless because of addictions, or they fall into addictions when they're homeless. Any way to escape thinking about the position they're in. They're unhappy. They're very, I guess you could say, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and usually physically too, in poor health. And I find that these things can be contagious like a virus in their own way. So I stay away from that. Drink a lot of water, hydrating. I'm not going to get into that. There's a long list of benefits to it. Live a minimalist lifestyle. In my lifestyle, finding a place where I can be left alone, where I have peace, quiet, solitude, it can be tricky because there's not very many places you're really welcome to be. Society as a whole tries to kind of force you into the system again, force you to become or to live in a shelter, to become or to live in Section 8 housing, which I've done, and again, being around people who were not beneficial to my own spiritual and mental well-being. So my point is that when I do find a spot like that, if I'm carrying around a lot of things, that gets noticed real quickly, and then I'll find myself vacated from that spot pretty quickly. So it's not that I want to be sneaky, but I kind of have to be a little bit sneaky, because the places that are nice and quiet and clean, well, they're that way for a reason. So I stay as respectful as I can. I don't leave any trash. I leave my stuff when I'm not here packed neatly out of the way. And it's taken me several months to finally find a place where I can stay unbothered, and knock on wood, I haven't been bothered here in a while. And it's really important that I find a place like this because it's necessary for my mental, emotional, and spiritual health. It's very difficult to maintain peace of mind and try to meditate in a place that's full of noise and full of trash and just chaos. So then I got keeping myself as neat and presentable as I can, within reason. It can be challenging sometimes because I don't have access to the laundry facilities that one would have going to a shelter. So yeah, that can be tricky. But I've developed a few tricks over the last year that have helped me to more or less keep that constant. And I do this not for vanity reasons, but just because you feel better when you're clean. Being selective about what I listen to, what I watch, what I read. This is something I've only really recently been paying more attention to. I've always been the kind of person, when it comes to music, that I just listen to what sounds good. I never really paid attention to the lyrics, but it wasn't really sinking in that really negative lyrics were sinking into my subconscious mind and were having an effect. I wouldn't have noticed it back then because I wasn't having ADHD and the other obstacles that I had to overcome. I just wouldn't have noticed that effect at that time. But since I have been meditating a lot and my mind is quiet for the most part, and I've gotten to know myself well enough to know when there's deviation in the way I like to think. If I'm listening to music like I used to like to listen to Slipknot, and I can't listen to Slipknot anymore. because there's just so much negativity and anger in their lyrics. And even though I wasn't paying attention to the lyrics, I found after I went to a listening binge of Slipknot here about 3-4 months ago, and I found I just in general was starting to get angry, and I had no real reason to be angry. And then it came to my attention. It was the music I was listening to, and it took a few days to get that music out of my head. But once I got that music out of my head, it was back to peace and quiet and solitude in here again. But I'm also selective about what I watch, especially because there's a lot of junk out there. Especially I like to use YouTube as a tool. And in the past, I would catch myself doom scrolling a lot, watching things that I found were interesting but really weren't beneficial to me in any way. Like I used to watch a lot of MMA fights, and while I do find the athleticism, the skill, and everything behind that interesting, knowing that knowledge doesn't benefit me anymore, because I'm not going out and getting in fights, and I have no intention of getting in a fight. I think that pretty much covers that. This is going to be a pretty short video. I'm going to sit here for a moment and think for a second and see if anything comes to mind. One thing comes to mind is the mental practice of slowing down. And I mean it almost literally in every sense. If I find my mind starting to race, or if I find that I'm in a position where I need to make a decision about something, it doesn't need to be immediate, but it's something that is really strongly on my mind and I just can't let it go, and meditating just isn't working for me, because I can't get my mind to stop thinking about this, even to meditate, even focusing on my breathing. The simple practice of just slowing down. And for me, that could mean looking out at the trees around me and just very slowly, inch by inch, going over every detail of that branch. And I do this until my mind's calm, until I find myself not thinking about that anymore. I used to do this with walking. I would count my steps. That was one of the first exercises I engaged in the process of calming my mind. Meditation wasn't something I could just step right into, not with ADHD, not at all. I had such a busy mind, it would keep me awake. I was averaging 3-4 hours of sleep a night on good nights because of the overthinking. Now I'm proud to say I'm probably getting 6 or 7, feeling pretty good. That's another necessity of living like I do and having a spot like I have, is being able to sleep worry-free. Now I have very strong beliefs spiritually. I believe very strongly that I am protected. I have seen a lot of instances of this being true in my life over the years, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to put it to the test deliberately. Like one of those Southern Baptist preachers picking up a rattlesnake. That's another one. I did say exercise, but in exercise I kind of like to emphasize yoga. Yoga is really good for developing peace of mind as well, I found. As much as I don't really resonate with sunlight because I'm on the spectrum and it just doesn't feel pleasant to my skin, being out in the sun has also been very beneficial as well. For the first time in my life, I actually have a tan. I'm not a sun lover, so for me, having a tan it's pretty amazing. Another thing too that I'm also catching on to recently, I've always been kind of aware of how humor is a positive thing, laughter is a positive thing, but I've been really endeavoring to implement more of that in my life. As much as I've been happier over the last year, I think, and more at peace than I've ever been in my life, there hasn't been much laughter. It's time to start reintegrating that into my life. It's time to start seeing everything that I've gone through and I currently go through from a humorous perspective, not derogatory, just humorous, light side of humor. I go out of my way to try to make people smile. It's not just good for them, but it's good for me. I try to be, in my own small way, a positive influence to those around me. To show people that, hey, there's a guy who's living on the streets. He's got not much more than the clothes on his back, and there he is. He's happy, not a care in the world. I've got all this. I got my job. I got my house, and I'm stressed out. I like to get people to think. For me, that's important to helping maintain my positive outlook on life. It's a practice and implementation of the skills I've developed. Next is another thing I'm working on, but I know, even though I haven't delved too far into it yet, that it is critical, and that is delving into the creative side of myself. I've done a little bit of writing. I don't really resonate with writing very much. I hope I don't have to do a lot of it in my lifetime. It's like watching paint dry. But there are so many ways to creatively express myself. And there's a whole world to explore. That even in my position in life, there's still new ways, new creative outlets to find. I don't need a lot of resources. But it's absolutely critical for me to express that creative need. I know not everybody's going to resonate with that. Some of you may say, well, I'm not an artist, but you might be surprised. If you gave it a chance, you may not resonate with the first medium that you try, but if you try many, you probably might find one you like. You find you're more creative than you believe. You just got to give yourself a little credit, give yourself a chance. I think that about sums it up. I mean, all in all, I've learned a lot from being in this position in life, and I'm not really worried about what other people think about it. I guess my people-pleasing days are done. Although I am looking forward, I will admit, to being housed again and having the resources to travel the world eventually. There are a lot of things I would like to see. I've seen a lot in my 51 years, but there's still so much more to see. And at 51, I've still got to remind myself that I'm not in my 20s, because I feel like it. That's one thing I'll say about this journey, is that when I started out, I was obese. I was overcoming drug addiction. I know that there are those in NA and stuff like that saying you never overcome it, you're always an addict. I don't believe that. I believe that once you heal your traumas, the need for those drugs goes away, because you're no longer trying to cope. Once you address the root of the problem, the symptoms go away. And I don't know, I forgot what I was going to say with that. Except to say, yeah, I think I know what I was going to say, that I am happier, legitimately happier than I've ever been. There's more I want, yes. But I seriously can't complain. I look around me, and I'm always observing. And I like to say I've become pretty good at reading people. And I don't see too many other people that have that glow of happiness about them. I do see them from time to time, and I can't say that they come from any one particular walk of life. They're scattered. And it's a beautiful thing when I do encounter those types. But I don't see too many. When I lost everything, what I really lost were the chains, the ball and chains around my feet, around my ankles. when I became unshackled, that was a freedom, because the thing is, when you have stuff, when you have things, you're tied to those things, and then you worry about things, keeping those things safe, keeping them from being stolen, keeping them from being broken, and you're energetically tied to those things. They become a burden. I didn't realize that something like that, a physical thing, could have a spiritual effect like that, but it does. It tugs at your energy. If something makes you worry, it's tugging at your energy, and that's a burden. It can be unhealthy, especially when you have too many things tugging at your energy. Now I just learned one final tip, I guess, is just to go with the flow, to go with the path of least resistance. And I have faith that no matter what, things will work out, because they always do. Life is never going to be perfect. I wouldn't want it to be perfect. Without the dark to provide the contrast, I wouldn't be able to see the light. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye for now. You all have a wonderful day, morning, evening, whatever it is, time you're watching this. See you later.